Okay, and we're on. And hi, Steve. Great to see you.
Good to see you again, Howard.
Thanks a million for coming on. I know we tried this once before, and thanks to my internet, it didn't exactly work out. So thanks for coming back and giving it a second shot.
No, very happy to be
I'm
here.
on the fiber broadband now, so hopefully it should go okay and there'll be no breakdown. So anyway, great to see you. When did we first meet?
I remember exactly when we first met, okay, because of how bland the context was. I was in the waiting room for a dentist and I got bored. I remembered I saw the CE5 app that I'd never used. I was trying to stop scrolling as much in my life, so I went on this instead. I came across a good mutual friend, Eric Deehan,
Eric, yes.
and I said, "What's up?" And he said, "There's a sky watching night coming up. Do you want to come along?" I said, "I'll come with my wife." And we did. And the rest, as we say, is history. That's where I met
Yes.
you. And that's where I
And your
met
wife
a
is
lot of
lovely, by the
others.
way. Yeah, it was great to meet her too. And how long ago is that? That's about 2 years ago, is it?
I'd say at least 2 years ago now. Yes. And I think we've met up maybe once, maybe twice a year since, which has been very
Yes.
nice.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It has. It's been great fun. Um, I wanted to ask you, okay, so how did you get started on the path of UFOs? And I know you're into more than just UFOs. I know you're into spirituality as well. So maybe we would start with we'll start with wherever you want to start, either UFOs or spirituality, whichever you want to start with.
Really? If you'd asked me this same question about 7 years ago, I probably would have said, I don't really think that's a very interesting conversation. I wasn't a very spiritual person, to be honest, and I wasn't really into UFOs. I remember when I was younger, I read a book on UFOs, like a comic book that my cousin had. I thought it was just plain weird. Won't say that I didn't get brought up with a bit of Star Wars and Star Trek in my life from my parents, but that was entertainment. It's not like I was thinking to myself, wow, aliens or anything exciting like that. It wasn't really a topic. Not that I didn't like it, it just didn't come up in my life very much. And spirituality, again, was one of those things where, like, yeah, I got brought up in a Christian family, but they were also very scientific. So, I learned to think very critically. And I think for a lot of my life, I was happily agnostic. So, yeah, maybe there's something more. We don't understand it. That's okay. There's plenty to think about in life here. So I didn't think into those topics very much. Now, all of that changed when I met my wife 7 years ago. It was a strange coincidence. The very short story is we met in a field in the middle of nowhere. But
Okay.
the longer story is that we met in a stone circle by chance. It was a very strange coincidence. I did not know her when we met. It was a stone circle on a full moon on the winter solstice. And these stone circles, that everybody knows much about Irish history, have very much a strong connection and alignment with the patterns of the stars. And this specific place, Drumbeg Stone Circle, it's called, down in West Cork, on the 21st of December every year, has a special alignment with the sun setting. And it's quite beautiful on a clear evening if you go down at that time.
Hmm.
And there would be people, it's never advertised, but there are people dancing, playing music, eating food, maybe the odd bottle of wine. And it's pleasant. It's really nice. And I enjoyed exploring with my friends. I have a very good friend who used to do it. I'm not going to mention his name because I haven't talked to him about this. And I wouldn't want to be highlighting his name when I haven't asked. But he
Sure.
probably would be open to the idea if I did. He's a very open-minded individual and very grounded man. So anyway, it's one of those carpooling situations where, five of us, one car, 10 of us, two cars kind of thing. I didn't know most of the people. We went down and it was a very beautiful night. Now I had work the next morning, so I stayed for a short time, ate a bit of food, enjoyed the music a little bit, and then I started to drive home. The tire exploded in my car 2 minutes down the road. spent 3 hours waiting for somebody to get it fixed. And by that stage, I said, I am not going to work tomorrow. I'm going to get that bottle of wine out of the back of my car and drink all of it at once. And that is how I met my wife. Now,
Great.
it's a nice little story. I think it was a nice, funny little coincidence, all those little things coming together.
And was she was just invited to this, this night out as well, where you were all meeting at the Stone Circle and just a nice evening?
Yeah, exactly. She's from South America and she came here for a good holiday. She wanted to see the country, see what she could explore while she was here. And we just happened to be in the same place at the same time. Now, in life, you could argue that there are nice coincidences. You could say that maybe it's more than a coincidence. Again, I have to leave that for
Fate.
the individual to decide.
Sure.
So our relationship grew, and it was a very nice relationship. And then now and again, things got a little bit strange. That's the only way I can put it. Now, I want to remind anybody listening to this that I got brought up in a very scientific family. I have the lowest qualification in my family with a degree. Everybody else has PhDs, so I'm just saying come from a very rational upbringing.
Sure.
So,
well, if you don't mind me saying so, you're smart enough. I know you well enough at this stage. You're an intelligent man.
I enjoy teaching, and if I wasn't teaching, I would be doing physics because that was my other option. And I very much enjoy doing. I would rather sit down and look at physics equations and read books in it than I would watching TV.
Wow. Okay.
It's just it's just enjoyable for me, that kind of thing. So look, I'm very rationally minded, is what I'm saying, and if I see something unusual, I'll try and see it from every angle and be objective about it because I believe real scientific comes from the concept of being able to educate every idea without embracing any, and then forming the most grounded conclusion.
Fair enough.
Now, so as I said, nice relationship, things were going well. I was dropping her to her house one day after an evening out, and now it was interesting. It's hard to explain. So we get out of the car, okay? Now this is the middle of Shandon. Now that is a place in the center of Cork City. Now Cork City is a big enough city. For those who don't know, it's about 100,000 people. So in Shandon, which is basically the middle of Cork City, we get out of the car and I see what looks like an airplane flying overhead. You know, they have those big spotlights.
Sure.
And we're looking at that. Cool, another airplane. But then we realize as it's flying over us, there is no noise of any kind. And this light is kind of big. And we realize there's no outline of any airplane around it. So we're like, okay, that's not an airplane. This is something else. It's not a lantern. This is moving too fast. It's quite bright. And we're kind of thinking to ourselves, what could this be?
What color was the light, Steve?
It was perfectly white. Imagine you were looking at a low-flying airplane and the spotlight that's under those airliners. Exactly like that, but with no airplane and no sound. That's the perfect description of it. Also, for some reason, just as it flew right over us, there's no clouds, it's a starry night, this light just fades to nothing as it goes over us.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, as it's going over us, there's some people walking down the street. They're on some city tour. And I literally point up and go, guys, do you see this? Look at what I'm seeing. This is strange. Not like my exact words, but to that general idea. Not one of them even heard me. And they were just across the road from me, maybe 2 or 3 meters. They were not far. It was a very narrow road. Just down by the church for any locals there. They were all distracted by something in the moment. Maybe just coincidence. But either way, it happened. And there's that moment when I'm driving home and I'm just thinking to myself, did I really just see what I saw? And I'm rationalizing it, trying to think of what it could be. And that kind of loop just kind of stayed there for a few days. I was at a party with, and I met a friend of my brother's who specializes in air traffic control. I described it to him exactly. And he said he's never heard of anything like that. It's too big to be a space station. It's too quiet to be an airplane. It's too close, and like if it was an airplane, you would see the airplane on that
Well,
house.
usually, like I used to be a pilot. I used to fly helicopters, and a helicopter is the same as planes. Like you always see a green light on one side and a red light on the other, and the red light flashes. And the way I was taught was there's no red port left. That's the way they used to say to remember that the red light was on the port side on the left, and the green light was on the right. Okay, but you'd see them flashing. You know, you'd see the red light flashing. You know, as well as the noise. You know, it's distinctive.
I knew that from boats because my parents did a lot of sailing, so I knew those kinds of rules, and I knew there was going to be something similar with airplanes. And I've seen a lot of airplanes. I used to identify airplanes with my father while we were going past airports. Like, oh, look, an MD-11. And we'd know the names, we'd know what to look for, we'd know about the lights and general basic, controls that would be looked for.
Sure.
So, like, it was definitely in the realm of strange. I think I was happy to park it in the realm of strange. I was willing, as I said, I was willing to park it in the realm of strange, but that's when things got strange. So I'm just going to explain it exactly from my experience because I don't know how there's any
Sure.
other way to explain it. Okay.
Yeah.
So for a bit of context, I'm also a transplantee and I have diabetes. It's just kind of a result of genetic health history. There's nothing that can really be done about it. And I've learned to manage it and live well with it. I do sports and everything quite well. But it is something that exists. Just for context, something very strange happened a few days later. I cannot explain it, okay? It's like I started in a moment to feel extremely out of body. Like I
Okay.
didn't know where I was. I was with some family friends. It's like I recognized them, but like as a distant memory. I found it difficult to speak. I was so spaced out. It's like I was losing touch with reality. And it was a very strange sensation, and I was quite nervous, especially since I was starting a new job the next Monday. So, what I actually ended up doing, and this is a strange one, is I ended up booking a last minute hostel bed in a Buddhist center down in West Cork. I like that place personally because it's extremely calm, and if you want a good night's sleep, it always works. It's
Yep.
something about the place that's so quiet, you will always sleep no matter what's going on. And I've heard that from other people too. So I booked a hostel there, drove an hour and a half down there just for a good night's rest, which is what I thought would help me. Now, it's very hard for me to explain what happened that night. But when I woke up the next morning, I was different. Now, again, this is again coming from the context of somebody who was happily agnostic for a very long time. The metaphor I could think of for this was imagine your big toe, okay? You got thinking about your big toe? Imagine your big toe, somebody gave it a magic VR headset, okay? You understand?
Okay.
And suddenly your big toe was perceiving reality around it, okay?
Okay.
Now,
As in, like another part of yourself was now awake or experiencing something, is it?
wait, this is just the metaphor that I'm trying to explain. So imagine over time, this big toe with a VR headset starts to think that I, as a big toe, am everything that there is. And I am unique, I am sovereign, and there's nothing that controls my fate. Imagine your big toe saying that with a VR headset as a weird metaphor, okay?
Okay.
It sounds a bit ridiculous, doesn't it?
Small bit.
Yeah. Okay. But the only way I can describe it is that is what our lives are here. This is what we experience here in our bodies, because I have a lot of history with trying to understand physical health and my body and life for that reason.
Okay.
It's only a very small part of who we are. It's an incredibly small part of who we are that has gained awareness. And because it's the only awareness that we have of ourselves, we think it is all of who we are, when that couldn't be further from the truth. It is who we are, but it's only a tiny, tiny part of who we really are, like a leaf on a tree. yes, the leaf is a part of the tree, but it is its own leaf, but it's also a part of the tree intrinsically.
Okay, I
And
think I
that is who
understand.
we are. And it was deep, like to my core. I had never felt this before. I don't know where it came from. The most spiritual I was before was meditation really makes me feel calm. That was my deepest spiritual insight beforehand. Okay.
Okay.
And maybe, as a child, a bit of our fathers in the church, but I felt a bit rational for that, too rational for that after a time as a teenager, I think. But this experience, however it happened, it's one of those things that doesn't leave you. It changes you for the better.
And you relating this, I suppose, maybe spiritual awakening to having seen that craft, whatever it was.
This is one of those things, I can't explain it logically, but I just know it, that yes, it was.
Well, that's fair enough.
I cannot tell you any more logic beyond that, only that I know it.
Okay.
I know exactly how that sounds, but I would be being dishonest if I tried to say more.
No,
Because
it's a good translation. I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. Yeah. No, I do. It is a good translation. Okay, so that was your first, I suppose, awakening. Maybe did you understand it was a UFO that you'd seen, or
you see,
did that dawn on you?
this is where my rational mind and my intuitive mind kind of clash. My rational mind was, you saw a light, you can't say that it was any more than that. But something inside me said that it was, the phrase I would use, it was something higher. Does that make sense, that
Yeah.
phrase?
Okay. Yeah. It wasn't. It wasn't just, you knew it was more than just a light. It was more. It meant more. It hit you at a deep level.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
what was
Yeah.
interesting to boot, okay, and this is something that made it more tangible for me. But for 2 months after that, my diabetes disappeared.
Well. Okay.
Now, what was interesting about, you see, I can prove it because I have a 24/7 monitor on my arm that monitors my blood sugar levels. And I could tell from a monitor I was taking zero insulin, eating as much as I want, and my sugar levels were perfect, which
Well.
meant I did not have diabetes,
Okay.
which is biologically impossible because I have what's called cystic fibrosis induced diabetes, which basically means my pancreas is just scar tissue. It's dead. Biologically, you cannot regenerate scar tissue. It's impossible. But this did not take from the results. The results were the results.
Okay.
So,
And
yeah,
after the 2 weeks, did it seem to come back then again, or?
it was about, did I say 2 weeks? I meant 2 months. Sorry.
All right. Okay.
Yes, it did. When I started getting stressed and angry at work, and okay, for a spiritual metaphor, when my level of consciousness started to go down, when I started to worry about the small things, the angry boss, and get really emotionally involved with that way of life, that's when my diabetes came back.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's
Mm.
amazing. Okay. So that's incredible. And had you any other experiences then after that, or how? Where did it take you? Where did you go from there?
That was the big experience. As I said, my life kind of changed then, and I started getting involved in more like shamanic activities, energetic practices, because I really decided that I needed to understand this better. So I
Okay.
did, and there were lots of little situations, okay? Now, again, from the outside observers, they could be seen as nice coincidences, but for the individual, it really would feel like something more. Like, for example, like the situation with my wife and I, like a lot of situations seem to be almost like premeditated. There was how we met in a stone circle, the 1st of December, full moon. Like, who can orchestrate that? When we got married, we had one plan that accidentally turned out into another plan. And I ended up proposing to her on the Hill of Tara, which though non-Irish folk will know as, like, it's basically the ancient Hill of the Kings. in Ireland on the 21st of December when Saturn and Jupiter were coming together in what's called a conjunction. So
The 21st of December is the winter solstice, isn't it?
it is, but
Yeah.
by coincidence, Jupiter and Saturn were coming into conjunction. They were coming together like this and meeting in the middle. Complete coincidence. I swear I couldn't have planned it even if I tried. I didn't have an intention to plan it. We had a completely different plan in mind, and it just ended up happening.
And that's when you proposed on the
That's the
21st
moment
of
I
December.
proposed.
And
Yes.
did you have the ring with you then, or?
I had it in my pocket, but not for that occasion. I had it for
Right.
New Year. It's
Okay,
different.
fantastic, outstanding.
So
That's great.
lots of coincidences like that, and we have seen lots of little situations with what I put under the category of strange lights in the sky. I know there's lots of satellites, and there's the the ISS up there, and all that. But sometimes strange lights exhibit very strange behavior that's not easily explained. Specifically, when we are together, we would have seen these things a lot. One example is
Okay, sorry, go on.
what Stephen Greer would call the flashbulb effect. Imagine somebody's like 500 meters up taking a flash photo with a camera, and you'd see one, you'd be like, "Okay, that's cool."
Yeah, I've seen that. I've had the flash bulbs go off over my house. I'll try and put that video in just as we're talking about it now to give people an example of what the flash bulbs are. I had about maybe a dozen above the house, and they were just boop, 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 flashing on and off. You know, and initially you might think it was a plane, you know, but then they're flashing all over the place, and you just know it's not.
All over
Yeah.
the place, and it gets
Yeah.
a bit spooky. Yeah. So there's lots of little situations like that, and
Cool.
the weird part is they always seem to happen when we're together, which is, I don't know, you make of that what you will.
Well, actually, Greer has said that. Like, I can't remember, was it a documentary, in one of his documentaries, or whether it was just a talk he was giving or what. But I remember him saying that before, that, you know, when one person is meditating and they're trying to connect to the ETs, and I suppose maybe just for the audience, I should just go back a little bit there. So the person that Steve and I are talking about here is Dr. Stephen Greer, and he is, I suppose he's the world's leading ufologist, if that's a thing, if you want to call him that. And he has a couple of documentaries out called Unacknowledged, and another one, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where he teaches you how to meditate and how to connect with the extraterrestrials. And that was my beginning, actually, back in 2017 when I saw Unacknowledged, and I couldn't believe it. It took me probably 2 years to sink in that was actually real. I just didn't believe it. And then when I saw his documentary in 2020, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, I just thought they were, so I just thought it was rubbish, you know. And I didn't believe it until I went out out in the back garden one night, and I meditated. I'd never meditated in my life, and a blue orb appeared about 20 feet over my head, and I took a video and I took a photo, and it's, again, I didn't believe it. It was an old camera, and they're not very good. I have better photos and videos of orbs and that, which again I can try and attach, so the public can see. But the Stephen Greer did say that, he said, if you're meditating on your own, it's great. But if you have one or two or more people with you meditating, it amplifies it exponentially. It amplifies your meditative state together, the bond you've got together, the love you're feeling together. So I can only imagine a man and wife, like yourself and your wife, who are together and deeply in love. It must amplify it totally exponentially, So that's probably why you're getting a bigger result when you're together.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And this is something it's something I used to not like about, when I hear about New Age spirituality, like I know people who are in those circles and it would annoy me about it. They talk about love and light, rituals, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to this sacred site to take off my clothes for the goddess or whatever, that kind of carry on. I think, I think about the situations with my wife and I, the very real situations. And what people forget is that what, like, the way this is kind of going into the realm of people who haven't seen Stephen Greer and CE5. But for context, like they've found, like, for example, collective meditation, they've tested this, can actually reduce crime in certain cities. They've tried it and it
That's right.
works. Now, you could talk about that being the knock-on effect of human beings interacting. Maybe it's something more out there. It doesn't matter. It works is the bottom line. And what I'd say is, what people seem to forget in modern spirituality is that the simple everyday acts of love and caring mean just as much and probably more than any meditative practice or any isolated spiritual practice that you can do.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like,
Love is all that matters, really. I mean, I know
no,
it's an old saying, but it's true. You know, you can't be in any kind of state of happiness, or you can't feel any joy or fulfillment unless there's some love in you. And the more love you give out, the more you get back. I'm a 100% believer in that.
it's true. And the irony, the paradox is that people who really do have lives filled with love, they don't promote it because they have no need to show it to others because they're already fully fulfilled. But it is everywhere. Go to your average suburban neighborhood, like especially the ones that are just absolute chaos with children, okay? If you are into energy and intuition and this idea of how a place feels, I can tell you there is more holiness in a place full of chaotic families that are happy to be there than there is in any church, any synagogue, any mosque, any pagan spiritual site, any temple. There is more holiness in those happy families than
Absolutely.
there will be in anything you can create.
For sure.
And
No,
I think,
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
like, we're talking here about, let's just be blunt, we're talking about strange lights in the sky, UFOs, the change of consciousness, and hopefully that the world will change in a moment because there's a lot of bad in the world, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It starts with that. It starts
Yeah.
with that simple human love.
Um, a lot of the gurus are saying that 2027 is going to be the year where DETs disclose themselves like properly. Excuse me, to the human race. You know, it won't be just light bulbs. It won't be just orbs, which I've seen a lot of. Now, I have seen a couple of actual craft as well, but you know, like everyone is going to see it. I mean, they're around all the time. I had an instance where I had a friend called to the house, and we were at the front gate of the house, and she was about to drive away in the car, and we were talking, and she wasn't really open to ET. You know, still thinks I'm a bit mad, a bit cookie, I think. You know, but just as she was leaving, I said, "Oh, there's one right there. You could see a kind of a disc shaped light. It was you could mistake it for a cloud, but it was much brighter. Like it was really bright. You know, um. So if you looked at it all for more than a second, you'd see it wasn't a cloud." And she got out of the car and said, "It's." I pointed at it and I said, "It's right there." And she couldn't see it. She said, Where? What are you looking at? I can't see it." So I took a photo and I took a 2-second video and I showed her on the phone. See, it's right. See in that space in the sky. It's right there. And she's looking at the phone. She's looking at the space. She said, "I can't see that. I can see it in your phone." But she said, I can't see it there. She said, "Is it still there?" I said, "It's still there." You know, so their science is conscious based, um, as Stephen Greer says. And if they don't want you to see them, you won't see them. You know, if they do want you to see them and you're open to it and you're not afraid, you'll see them. You know, but 2027 seems to be the year that a lot of the gurus are saying that that they're going to, you know, show themselves properly. Like we're right at the end, right at the cusp. The world is in a terrible state. People are in a terrible state. The planet is, I mean, we're killing the planet. So, and they have the technology to undo that, to reverse it, but before it's too late. So 2027 seems to be the year. Stephen Greer mentioned between the next 12 to 18 months that he thinks, you know, who else has said it? There's a CIA, an ex-CIA operative. He was a remote viewer, John. He's an American Chinese man. It'll come to me again. John something. Anyway, he has said it. That chap that channels Bashar, he's said 2027. There's been 3 or 4 of the kind of, if you want to call them gurus, have mentioned 2027. So that seems to be the year that big things are going to happen. Hopefully, you know, because as I said, like, I mean, we're on the verge of self-destruction. So I don't know if you have you heard that or heard any whispers like that?
Well, look, I have, of course, like, being from South America, my wife is a very rational. She's a very rational woman, but in the context of, you ever hear the phrase, "You either trust the government or you know your history."
Sure.
Now, I know that's very kind of anarchistic, that phrase, but it's not that I hate the government, I don't trust it. It's not like that. Unfortunately, society changes, society shifts all the time. I think post-Cold War is the most stable time in was the most stable time in human history. And growing up in Europe, I haven't really known political chaos. And I'm sure you understand that, unless you haven't lived anywhere else, have you?
No, well, no, I
No,
haven't.
like, you understand, being from Ireland, we haven't really known like real political chaos in the context of societal breakdown. My wife, being from South America, they very strongly emphasize the history of politicians can be corrupt and they can screw a society over.
All politicians,
I
everyone.
know. And, you know, you start to get curious, kind of hearing about this. And then you're like, okay, I need to know my history. And then you realize, actually, I am very lucky to have grown up in a generation where there hasn't been political chaos, you know? And like the country where I'm from, where my wife is from, it's a very stable country, but they also know that can change and they're not afraid to confront it if it comes up. It's hilarious watching her talk about the Lord Mayor. You know, the poor guy's trying to make a speech on a microphone and she's ready to throw bricks at the guy. It's like, I know you're lying. I know you're not going to fulfill this promise. Like, we need more. Calm down, please. Come on, we're just here for the food. We're not here to change society yet, okay? Like that kind of thing. Okay, so like, to make an overgeneralistic term of you know history or you trust the government, or you can't do both. To be overgeneralistic for a second, I know that the direction we're going as a society, and anybody who's very honest with themselves can say the same, that actually it's not sustainable. And the only future is if something changes in a big way. Now, personally, I think it's a social change that will change that. Now, alien intervention, like, it could fix this, but it's still down to us. Like, I remember I had this conversation. Now, this is a bit controversial, but hear me out. I had this conversation with my wife before. It's like, okay, let's say we have free energy. It'd be great. Yeah. And she is like, yeah, it would be good, but they might try and control us in another way. What about with land? What about with force? Maybe they monopolize the energy. Or maybe they have, who knows? But you know, humans are very good at coercing others. We're very good at that as a species. So I do believe that in a moment there will be some kind of contact, but I don't know how it will be. But I imagine there will be something. But how we will react will be the more important thing, and
Well,
how we behave.
I know, as I said to you, when I first had contact, I couldn't believe it, even while I was having the contact. And for about 6 months, I thought I was going to lose my mind. I thought I was going insane from June to December. 2020. And when I calmed down and I got over myself and I fully believed, okay, this is real and it's happening, then they came back. For that 6 months, I didn't get any visits. And then they really came back, and then I was getting daily, nightly visits. And
Yeah.
sometimes they'd hover out the back of the house for hours. You'd see a spinning orb out the back of the house. And I talk to them like I'm talking to you, you know. No, I didn't get the two-way conversation, but I'd usually know they were there because my left ear would ring. Like you come out of a bar, out of a nightclub, a loud bar nightclub, and you hear that doo. So I'd
Yeah.
get that ringing and just in my left ear, not my right, So it wasn't tinnitus or anything like that. And when I'd hear the ring, and sometimes the pitch would change, it would go up and down, a little bit. Excuse me. And whenever I go outside, they'd be there, you know. I know it's going to frighten some people, and I often use the analogy, like if you take the Earth and say they came down, and they came down with 50 craft or 100 craft, and the next thing you know, they did a lap around the Earth, and then they did a lap this way, and then they did a lap that way, and they flew over every country, in the space of maybe an hour or two or whatever, and everybody saw them. 50 million people would drop dead of a heart attack. They know this. They're not stupid. That's why they haven't done it. They're very aware that their presence would be very frightening to a lot of people, and most people aren't ready for it. And
I'd
that's
agree.
why, like I don't know if you heard the Daniel Sheehan. He's that famous lawyer. He's probably the top lawyer in America. He broke the Iran Contra scandal when Iran were shipping drugs into America to fund themselves. Totally illegal. He broke that case and he wasn't killed, which is incredible in itself. And he's also the mouthpiece and the head legal counsel for the Jesuit Church, which basically makes him the counsel and mouthpiece for the Catholic Church. They're one and the same. The Jesuit is just a different order. And they don't answer to any of the hierarchy in the Catholic Church. They answer directly to the Pope, which basically means they're the answer to themselves. And he mentioned in this podcast that everyone, all the priests and whoever, cardinals or whoever they are in the Jesuit Church, all of them are specially selected. They have at least 2 or 3 PhDs each, highly intelligent men, highly placed. And they would be placed in very politically influential places, they have the ears of the government, all this kind of stuff. They'd be very powerful men and highly intelligent men, well placed men. And as he said, like he was on the podcast. I think it wasn't Danny Jones. It was or was it Jesse Michaels? I can't remember. He's on one of their podcasts. And let me just check that actually. See, can I find it? Just for 1 second. Julian Dory. He's on the Julian Dory podcast. It's about 3.5 hours long, but if you haven't seen it, it's very informative, and the stuff that he drops is incredible, even about the Catholic Church. Like he tells a lot, and he said they need to disclose all the things that they've lied about along at the same time as this UFO disclosure, because he said if they don't do it now, it's going to end them. And he said, I've said that to them. And the fact that he's their mouthpiece and their head legal counsel, and he's saying this publicly and this Julian Dory guy, excuse me, he's fairly well known in the States. Like he's got a big podcast and a big following, but that his podcast, that 3.5 hour podcast, it's heavy going, but the stuff he discloses in it. And what he stated was, he said, we're going through a 7-year disclosure, a 7-year planned disclosure. He said, that's what we're going through right now. And he said, it's been going on from 2017, and this podcast could be a year old now at this stage, to like 2024. And he said, this is a planned disclosure. He said, they're drip feeding us, the Congress, all that's going on with the Congress, with, that David Grush coming out, and the two fighter pilots, David Fravor and Commander Ryan Graves, and how they swore in front of Congress, and Timothy Gallaudet came out a few months ago. It's being drip fed over the last 7 years. The first big feed was the New York Times, the article that they printed about Commander David Fravor and Commander Ryan Graves chasing the Tic Tac and the USS Nimitz and all. That was the first real piece of disclosure, and they've been drip feeding us since. But what he said what they're afraid of is what they're calling catastrophic disclosure. That the ETs disclose themselves, because he said most people aren't ready for it, and he's right. Now, more and more and more stuff is coming out. And the analogy I gave as well, like, about them flying around the earth and people have a heart attack. Like, I mean, that would happen. Like, people would be really afraid, I believe, most people. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast, to tell people, like, there's nothing to be afraid of. If they were going to harm us, it would be done a long time ago. They'd have just taken us out. And they could do it in a flash, in a heartbeat. It wouldn't be that we'd be shooting them down with machine gun. It wouldn't be. They would just snap their fingers and we'd be gone. It's that simple. They're hundreds of thousands to millions of years more advanced than us. And
I agree with what you're saying, and the reason why, because I've thought about this myself. You kind of go through a bit of a process when this happens. Some people more, some people less, okay? I got to give you the example of my father. So when this situation with the diabetes happened, when it went away, I got very excited and I started telling a couple of family members. My father's reaction was icy silence. He refused to even acknowledge what happened. And even today, if I bring it up directly, he goes icy quiet again and sometimes even leaves the room. And I think what it is this idea, if you were to take it at an intellectual level, okay? Take everything you know about life in an intellectual way, and then add aliens into the equation.
Yeah.
It's a bit Lovecraftian. It's not just a bit Lovecraftian, it's extremely Lovecraftian. Now, I was lucky that I had a very good experience, a direct experience that did not feel Lovecraftian. It felt quite the opposite. So I was very lucky. But if somebody had come to me, and somebody close to me had come to me and told me this, I probably would have had one of those Lovecraftian experiences too.
You wouldn't have believed it.
I wouldn't have believed it. But if I had even a bit of proof, like a proof of it, and I couldn't fit it into the equation, I'd be feeling a bit Lovecraftian. Like, there's this concept that historians talk about sometimes, okay? The native South Americans when the conquistadors came along, okay? So imagine you're a native, okay? The biggest boat you have is the size of the kitchen table. Then one day you're walking along the beach looking for any potential dangers, and suddenly you see the ship of Christopher Columbus coming up on the beach. Okay, now apparently, according to some texts, literally what happened is the scouts took one look at this massive armada and went, no, that doesn't exist, and just kept moving. There was nowhere in the filing system of their brains to put it. So they didn't. So they kept moving. So once these Spanish came into the hometown, they were like, who are these guys? Why didn't you tell us about this massive armada?
I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, I was the same. If you told me 10 years ago I'd doing a podcast with you talking about this, I'd have laughed you out of the room. I did not believe it. I mean, I used to I call myself, back then, I was anally skeptical. I was so far the other end. So I absolutely understand how people find this so hard to believe. But I mean, it is happening. They are here. They've always been here. I mean, that's Tim Burchett, that American congressman, only said the other day, he reckons that they've either 5 or 6 bases under the water. They know the places where they are. And one of the bases is off the island of Guadalupe. It's an island off Mexico. And they sent the USS Nimitz down there. It was a while back. I can't remember exactly when. But the USS Nimitz carrier fleet, you're talking about, I don't know, 12 or 15,000 people on about a dozen ships. You know, like if the aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz itself, that's the mother. You know, and then you have 3 or 4 battleships and 3 or 4 destroyers and 3 or 4 submarines surrounding the ship, protecting it. And they sent that fleet down from San Diego to Guadalupe to monitor the ETs coming in and out of the water. Now, I mean, to send them down to the local shop would probably cost a couple of billion euro. So how much should it cost to send them down there for a number of months or whatever it was, you know, monitoring them? You know, I mean, that it must have cost billions. So, or at least hundreds of millions. You know, I have no idea, but I mean, I'm sure it cost an awful lot of money to do that. So they didn't do that for the fun of it. But to get back to what I was saying there about, catastrophic disclosure and people not being ready. Anytime I've had an encounter with them, and especially the first time, that was the most intense, when the blue orb flew over 20 feet over my head. I got an overwhelming sense. Like if I saw, you know, before I knew about any of this, if I saw a UFO, I'd have been running down the back fields over the back wall, and you wouldn't see me for a fortnight. I mean, I'd have been terrified. But that first time that the blue orb flew over my head, I got an overwhelming sense of peace and calm and love. And I've had that feeling from them since. And there's been times where they've actually helped me, you know, when I've asked for it directly. No, it can't be, will you go down to the shop? I couldn't be arsed. I know I get told quite quickly where to go. But if it's a genuine need and you have a connection with them, well, they've helped me anyway. You know, and there's been specific times where it's been obvious they've helped me.
I agree.
One example, simple example, my partner, she's no more than your own wife. She's Brazilian. She's Brazilian, you know, South America. So she has zero interest in this. You know, you're very lucky that your wife joins you in this, and she enjoys the experience with you, and you're experiencing it together, because my partner's, she's zero interest. I can't have this kind of conversation with her. She just goes quiet, you know, like your dad. And she's seen stuff with me, like, you know. And one time she was going off with her cousin in the car, and it was 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It was winter time, maybe about a year ago, and I could see a little light way up in the sky, just moving along, and it looked like a moving star, but it was changing direction. And I pointed up, and I said, "No, there you go." And her cousin was very interested in it, but she was like rolling the eyes, and God, here we go again, you know. Excuse me. And I whispered up, and I said to them, "Is there any chance you could come down a bit lower and just sicken this one's arse for me, please?" You know. And boom, then it appeared over the house. I said, "Get out of the car, have a look." I think I've got this recording as well. I can put this up. And there they are. And you can hear her cousin is she gets very excited.
When I get the video.
And, you know, that I don't speak any I have like 5 words of Portuguese. And you can hear, da, 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 you know, and she's talking away in Portuguese. And I actually still don't know what she was saying, but I know she was excited, saying, you know, there it is, look, you know, kind of thing. But as I said, most people aren't ready. Somebody asked me, they said to me the other day, there's a guy in a local shop, in a local hardware shop I go into, and, you know, he's never seen anything, but he is interested in the subject. And I've shown him some stuff on my phone. I've shown him a couple of photos and videos. And he's like, why don't they just come down and fix things? Wouldn't they just fix things? He gets very frustrated. And he would be a bit politically minded. And I've said to him, well, look, I said, it's not that easy. I said, if you think about it, like, they're a lot more advanced than we are. And I'm sure they've thought this through. And, you know, you say they do come down and fix everything. And say they fix the world, and, you know, they get rid of all the big leaders, the Chinese guy, and they get rid of Trump, and they get rid of Putin, and they put nice people in place of them. You know, they're telepathic. They can read your mind. They know what you're about in 10 seconds, I'm sure. And, you know, say they pick really intelligent, genuine, but really loving, good people of the very best of intentions, and they only want the very best for all the people in the world and the world itself, right? And said they put these people in place, right? And they fix everything, and they fix poverty, and they fix the pollution, they fix the planet, and everything is amazing, and everything is just fantastic, and they fix everything, right? The one problem with that then is, does that make them an invading force? Because they've done it. Even though they've done fantastic things and they've changed the world 1,000,000% for the better, they've still done it. You know, we haven't done it. You know, so
That's
does that then
called
make them an invading force? You know, I'm sure they've thought this through. So it's not that simple.
that is called a colonial mentality. That's what the colonies said. Sorry, but that was the
Like, what I mean is that you know, they fix things positively for the better. Like, you can easily see, no, there's no poverty anymore. You know, they give us technology that extends our lifespan. They fix all the pollution. They give us free energy, all that kind of stuff. So they fix everything for the absolute better. But even having done that, does that make them an invading force? You know, it's not that simple. Well, that's what I'm saying. But say they do, not like colonialism, but say they come in, they fix the planet, they fix poverty, and they do only good things. But they've still fixed it then. But the problem is, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the last thing the Biden administration did before good old Joe left and his administration left, they mobilized nuclear weapons in places against China and Russia. And China and Russia have now done the same in kind. And since the doomsday clock hasn't been activated since the 1940s, and since January, I think, it has been reactivated. And we are now 10 seconds to midnight. We've never been this close to nuclear war. And the planet's biosphere is on its knees. The sea's polluted. The air's polluted. The food is polluted. We've destroyed everything. And you and I don't have a chance to fix this. And you know, we're in terrible danger, and the planet is in terrible danger. So, I mean, I've asked the question, like, can you please help us? Can you please just take leadership out of the current leaders' hands, fix things, and put somebody else, anybody else that you can read their mind, that you know they genuinely have a good heart, not a politician, and a leader who will be allowed to make positive changes, get rid of nuclear weapons, help the sick, help fix the medical system, free medicine for everybody. There shouldn't be money. I mean, I've said this before. I mean, I'm far from being a genius, but Jesus, I mean, just get rid of money. You know, if everybody does, bring it down to a 20-hour working week. So everybody works a 20-hour week. That makes more jobs for everybody, because there's people are working less hours. There's no money. Okay, everybody just continues doing what they're doing, but just for 20 hours, and then 5 hours of community service, where you visit the elderly, or you do something to give something back, and that's 25 hours your week instead of 40, and it's 20 of your normal working hours and 5 hours community service, and for that you get all the food you need, you don't pay rent, you get somewhere to live, you get all the food you need, and you get 2 holidays a year. How bad is that? It's no, but you know what I mean. It's a start, but I mean, I've asked that question, but you know, as I said, I don't get the two-way conversation. I mean, I've had loads of contact, and I get feelings, but we don't have a two-way conversation. So, I mean, I've asked the question, but I haven't got an answer yet. But I mean, I wish they would. You know, I wish they would come down and fix things, because certainly the leaders of our world aren't fixing things. More of the same isn't working. I've had Reiki done on me, and I've done level 2 Reiki. And to be honest with you, for people that don't know, so Reiki it's an old Japanese healing art form where you use energy from your hands, you know, placed on the body or above it. You direct. Well, I thought it was you're directing your own energy. And when I did the course, if I knew what I was doing initially, I wouldn't have done it, because, again, I wasn't spiritual, and I would have thought, oh, this was rubbish. But I just went. I don't know why I went, and I did a Reiki course. I did the level 1, and then when I was going to do the level 2, My Reiki master said to me, "You know that you're transferring energy from the universe, not from yourself." I said, "No, I didn't know that." And when I was doing it, she said, "Geez, you've a real natural ability, you know." And I said, "Oh, do I?" And she goes, "Yeah, I was, doing Reiki over this other student." And she goes, "Yeah, yeah." She said, "Can you feel the energy?" And I couldn't feel, I couldn't feel jack shit. I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I can you? Oh, yeah, yeah, you know." But my hands did start to get really hot, like red hot, and seemingly I have a bit of a natural thing with it. Anyway, when it was done on me, passed out, fell asleep straight away. And when I was doing it on the student here, and she was telling me I had the natural ability, the next thing you go, and your mom was unconscious. And she slept for 45 minutes after I think, and my Reiki master said to me, I said, "Do we wake her?" Or, and she goes, "Oh, no, no, you never wake them." She said, "Just let her sleep." And we went over and we sat down, we had a cup of tea and a biscuit, and like it was 45 minutes later. And she, geez, sorry, I think I fell asleep. Yeah, you did, yeah, for 45 minutes. So yeah, I know where you're coming from. It's powerful stuff. It does, like, the Japanese they're smart people, and they've been doing this for thousands of years. So there's something to it. And for the people out there, and I know this is a really hard topic to believe, especially if you're coming across for the first time. And I didn't believe it. But what I would say to people is 90% of the stuff out there on the internet is bullshit. And anything you're hearing from the American military or Congress, and if you hear the word threat, they're invading our airspace with impunity. If I hear that word again, it's bullshit. They've been here before us. I'm convinced of it, And if two people I believe in, that I hold faith in, and don't, if you hear anything from the American military or CIA or Congress, and if they're spouting that they're a threat and that they're invading our airspace, it's horse manure. They're not a threat. If they were a threat, we'd be gone. It's that simple. The two people I hold stock in would be Stephen Greer and Dolores Cannon. Have you ever come across Dolores Cannon? Yeah, she's like about 20 books written. No, some of the stuff she says is bonkers mad, and I'm still wouldn't be 100% fully with her, but some of the stuff that she said I've seen and experienced, so I tend to believe her. And she just doesn't just talk about UFOs; she talks about everything: spirituality, God, the ETs, all that stuff. And she goes into, she goes to really far realms with it. But some of the stuff that she says, I've seen and experienced, and I tend to believe her. But those two people I would pretty much hold faith in. And it is a positive spiritual awakening. It's a very positive and loving thing. They're very loving people. These I don't want to call them aliens, the ETs, but they're people. They look a little bit different, sure. I mean, if you're trying to, when you're talking to your dad, what I would do is I bring up my phone, bring up a photo of the congressional hearing with David Grush and the two fighter pilots either side of them, the three of them. And you'll see underneath, there'll be a caption underneath: David Grush, David Fravor, and Ryan Graves on the UFO congressional hearing. Like, when you see something like that in the Hall of Congress in America, and three very reputable, high-ranking people, it makes it real. So if I'm talking to somebody for the first time, they're going, really? I show them that photo. And if you get up a clip of like the astronaut Buzz Aldrin came out years later and said that they were being followed by a UFO when they're going to the moon the first time. He said there was a light following us, and he said we called it in on the private channel. And he said, "Houston, we have this light." They didn't know what it was, so technically, as he said, it's a UFO. And there was another guy from NASA came out and made a statement that when they were landing in the crater the first time, Neil Armstrong called in. He said, "They're here. they're surrounding the crater. They're watching us. And Houston Control said, spin their ship, the lunar module, spin at 180 degrees so the camera doesn't catch them when you're landing. But they were there, they were watching them. And I'm convinced, the way the conspiracy theorists, the conspiracy theorists say that we didn't go to the moon and they were all faked. I believe that, I'm certain we did go to the moon. But I believe that a lot of the photos and videos were faked and were shot in the studio, because in a lot of the videos and photos, you can see the ETs in the background. That's why they've been faked and airbrushed and all that stuff. I think that's why they've been faked, but they have been to the moon. I'm certain of it. And another thing you could show your dad is if you show the clip of Professor or Dr. Edgar Mitchell. He was another astronaut. He was the 7th man to walk on the moon. He's a very outstanding man. He's real. You can just tell by the way he speaks. He's not lying. He's a real honest, he's full of integrity and is a real honest man. You can just tell the way he's speaking. And he said, yes, he said, the ETs are real and it's been covered up. And if you see 2 astronauts talking about it and you show your dad that photo of David Grush, Ryan Graves and David Fravor, it's very real. It makes it very real. And, that's the approach I take with people if they're having doubts or if they're looking at you like you have 2 heads when you say they're real and they're here. Great. Okay, buddy. Well, listen, thanks a million for doing this. And hopefully we'll catch up again soon. Okay. Thanks a million. Talk to you soon. Cheers.